Okay, I think that we are live now. This Hangout on air is live. Here we are. I didn't even know that we had anybody watching. So I'm so glad that we've got a couple of people. So here we are. We have Ocean.
Giggle.
Ocean.
Hi.
Ocean is a pagan. And before we get into sort of the thing that surprised me and what caused me to be really super extra interested, oh, for crying out loud.
We've lost our host. Bear with us. Oh no.
I'm back.
Oh, good.
My
I thought I was going to
apologies.
carry on without you. That would have been very disconcerting.
That wouldn't have been very fun either.
Hi!
Okay, so I figure I'm hoping that we can keep this relatively short to increase the potential of getting new viewers. So I'm kind of going to push us a little bit at the beginning. So the first thing is I wanted to start at the basic level, because I think most people that, like my next door neighbor, that type, especially if they tend to be on the Christian, whether they're professing Christians, put it that way, when they hear the word pagan, they kind of think reprobate. So they don't really, there's not a real clear sense in regular lay people, average Joe, soccer mom life, what it even means, right? So we wanted to clear that up a little bit. I think that
definitely reprobates. And
you set off my dog.
No.
You set off my dogs. That is your power.
I'm sorry.
All right, so explain how paganism doesn't just mean some jerk.
Well, I mean, some of us are jerks, but it comes from, I'll go into the kind of the history of the word. It comes from the word paganos, which just simply means country dweller in Latin or in Greek, one of those words, one of those languages. And it's people that lived off the land, that kind of thing, and usually these people had nature-based religions, and they were seen as unsophisticated, so on. It was kind of a derogatory term. Later, it got picked up by the Catholic Church to mean people that are non-Christian, and it was still used as a derogatory term throughout a lot of history until it was sort of picked up by the neopagan movement. So
so the Christians used it as a derogatory term, but I think so tell me if this is a good enough sort of idea, vague sort of idea, that's better than, oh, it means some jerk, right? Or some woo. It's sort of people whose religion go back to pre-Christian roots, sort of originator.
I mean, not necessarily pre-Christian. Like Wicca is not necessarily pre-Christian, is considered pagan, but is
the connection to nature more how people should be thinking?
It's more like there's a lot of religions that are it mainly is Eurocentric in how people use it. Although you might consider Odin, which is an African religion, pagan. It just kind of it depends. There's a lot of different ways that people use it, and there's some as the Catholic Church uses it, Muslims are pagan.
Right.
But as far as people that self-identify as pagan, especially in the modern world, we're talking about people that are Asatru, or which is the Viking religion, or Druids, or chaos magicians. You get all kinds of different religions. As the most Eastern religion that I've heard people refer to as pagan is Zoroastrianism. Which is another pre-Christian belief set. A lot of them are pre-Christian, some of them are not. Some of them are more recent sort of phenomena, but that's when you get into, there's kind of a divide among pagans where you have reconstructionists and then you have eclectics, people that follow traditions and people that are not following a tradition. And a lot of them are based on pre-Christian beliefs, some of them are not. So it's a very open term.
Okay, so before we get into the divide and where you fall on the divide, the other misconception, and this will lead right into it, is that pagan kind of means, somebody who believes in horoscopes, somebody who worships crystals, or who has lots of different crystals and can tell you the meaning of obsidian, right? And you need to hold this obsidian because you're feeling so sad and that kind of thing. And so I did look on Wikipedia about 10 minutes before we spoke, because I had a dinner to go to, and this divide that you're talking about seems to me, at least if it reaches Wikipedia, it's at least mainstream enough, right? So there seems to be at least one grand sort of subdivision that even the pagans themselves are accepting, and they're calling the one branch eclectic, right? And the other branch sort of a reconstructionist, get to the roots, find the real history, which is, I believe, called reconstruction. Is that correct?
Reconstructionism.
Yeah. And
yeah.
so the woo folks, you can call them pagans. They would be in the eclectic group.
Not just.
But
they're on both sides. Like, you get people. First, there's a lot of ideas about what woo really means. It's a derogatory term that really just means whatever the person that is using it wants it to mean. If it simply means somebody believing in things that are not scientific, then I'm wooey because I believe in gods.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, God. All right. So, but then you get the people that are like, sleep with this crystal under your pillow and you're going to feel better and that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily know where a lot of that stuff is rooted, but it's definitely in the pagan community. But
right. So for the purposes of you and me and this talk, you would not call yourself in the eclectic group. You have a historical, foundational, rooted kind of paganism, and it especially relates to, the Scandinavians, the Scrubby Dutch, the Nordics, the Norwegians, and especially the Vikings.
Yes. I'll qualify something real quick. Pretty much anybody that is a reconstructionist is going to be eclectic to a certain extent. There has to be a certain amount of creativity in order to have a complete spirituality when approaching the reconstruction of a dead religion. Because there's very, like, with the Druids, there's no writings left. With the Asatru, there's a little bit of writings that are Icelandic. It's hard to come by.
Right. So the people in Iceland were the only ones in the 700s to 800s to 1000. It was
declared dead.
They were the only ones who were writing.
Yeah.
They were the only ones who could write, right? Although there are glyphs or rune stones from some of the other countries. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the Picts, for example, they're in modern day Scotland. Celtic pagans that were there, that's considered the Celtic Holy Land. They had there's lots of inscriptions from them. We don't have any idea what they mean, but there's pictures, and sometimes these pictures are in kind of stacks on top of each other, and there's a couple of ideas floating around about how it might be a paired symbol language of some kind, but nobody knows. You can't there's nothing to extrapolate from. There's no Rosetta Stone for the Picts. And even if there was, assuming that that's a language is only going to get you so far, because there's not very much material out there. You're not going to get stories of epics. There's no documents that has all these little things on them. It's usually just these large obelisk-looking stones that have pictures on them, and you find the same pictures in different areas of Scotland. For example, these are the kind of things that you're running into as a pagan, trying to, especially as a reconstructionist, trying to rebuild a religion that is dead through archaeology and whatever writings you can get your hands on. Sometimes you get your hands on something and you don't know if it's a writing. So it's part of the challenge of it. It's definitely it's described as religion with homework, because Christians are lucky they get this Bible. And they're both lucky and unlucky at the same time, because the Bible gives them this one monolithic thing that this is Christianity. And with pagans and reconstructionists and eclectics and so on, there's nothing like that. We're not really bound by much. And even the writings that we have are not declared holy or inerrant or anything like that. I was just reading the history of the Jelt Vikings, I believe. could be butchering that pronunciation. I read these things, I don't say them. And in there it's saying this is not really a history, this is a story. There's a lot of historical characters in here, people that existed, but here's some of the things that are in the story that didn't happen. Here's some of the things that did. You know, it's nobody claims that it's infallible or anything like that, like the Christians do.
Right. Sure. Okay, so I think let's talk now specifically about you and why, what drew you to Norse mythology, or at least the polytheism of the Vikings, and sort of the historical angle, and what about that interested you or moved you?
Well, okay, I started off as a Christian and got involved in something called Celtic Christianity. Christianity was like a mess for me.
So wait. What about it was a mess? What do you mean by that?
I'll go into that for a second. I believed in it very fervently. I was a good church going guy. I was Episcopalian. Well, first I was a Baptist, then I was Episcopalian, then whatever. And one of the things that I was having trouble with was the whole, like, I believed in it, but the whole like structure of Jesus sacrifices himself so that you can go to heaven, and this is the method that God is using to bring people to him, to live with him in heaven. It was like, what's the point of all of this? And for something that's supposed to give you the answer to life and everything, and it was unfulfilling on that angle. So when I went into Celtic Christianity, there was a acceptance of Jesus as well as a nature spirituality, seeing God the Father as a nature God as well, something that gave us the creation, and we are to watch over it, we are to take care of it. And this is something that I feel is missed in Christianity, even though it seems to be the lesson of Genesis to me, or one of the lessons of Genesis. The first little bit of the Eden garden thing. So, anywho, looking at that, I was like, wait, what is this extra bit that's popping up here? What is this based on? And that's when I started delving into Celtic Christianity, or the Celtic paganism that inspired a lot of this. And I wound up getting pretty serious about it. I went to Ireland, I went to Scotland, visiting some Celtic Christian and pagan sites and learning about the history of it. And eventually there was a feeling of homeness that was in that spirituality to me, that I was like, oh, this is kind of the experience in Christianity that I was looking for. And that I had experienced briefly, but it's so much stronger here. And from there, I've chased it down. Spirituality to me is like this giant puzzle that, because you can't use science or anything in order to verify very much. So, but you have these kind of spiritual experiences as a human walking around, and I'm curious about those, and I think that religion is a good way to start to try and learn about them. So
I visited once.
Chasing that got into, I eventually wound up with Norse paganism to kind of fill in some gaps of Celtic paganism, and Celtic paganism because of that feeling. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I understand that feeling. I remember once visiting the Temple of Assisi and thinking of, it was the most kind of, if there was ever a feeling that the word holy would fit, I felt something like that when I was in that little tiny place. So you felt something spiritual when you were there, and that's what made you start studying, as opposed to just going. So my reaction to that little spiritual moment, or any little bitty spiritual moments I've had been, wow, oh, that's what people mean when they say spiritual. I can feel that. I connect with that. I understand the emotions, right? But I never did go, so there must be something real there, external to me, and let me go study it. Whereas you kind of came to that conclusion and not only thought, let me go study it, but you've now studied it quite extensively, at least more than the average Joe.
Yeah.
Right? Right? So that's interesting. What is, I just, let me just say, I thought that I had heard you say that you were historically pagan or something along those lines. And so I was kind of thinking of you as sort of a cultural pagan, right? Like cultural Jews call themselves. So, and then you came on David Silverman, and I thought, okay, so now I'll at least, let's see what happens. And
that was fun.
And you, that was fun.
Adding around with him, great.
Yeah, he's really something. I mean, he's definitely not vanilla. But when he asked you, you really think that these multiple gods that you're holding as your gods actually exist, or really exist? I thought you were going to hem and haw and talk about culture and history and your interest and that kind of thing. Instead, you said you said yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do exist, and I'm like, okay, whoa, right? I was shocked.
Which is a little bit different than saying they do exist. I didn't
say you believe in it. You said you believe they exist.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay. That's fair. Let me qualify something real quick. As far as saying I believe they exist.
Okay.
I am a provisional pagan. If somebody is able to throw evidence in front of me that goes, your gods are false and it is just incontrovertible and I cannot be shown otherwise, then I'm gonna be like, all right, fine, all right, religion's over. I might still go into the cultural pagan thing, but if somebody proves to me that the gods don't exist, then great. I've got new information, and now the puzzle is way more interesting. There's a whole new frontier to tackle because now I know something. So let's what does this mean? What follows from this? And what are these experiences that I've had? Am I crazy? I don't know. What's going on? These are all things that would be very interesting if I was able to be given that kind of information. However, that's not the situation I'm in. I'm in a situation in which I've had some experiences that I've described to you, and I'm interested in chasing it down. And what's resulted from that is operating under the provisional belief that there are multiple gods that are out there, and that these people that had these experiences in history aren't necessarily joshing us. So that's where I sit.
It's very interesting. Tell me a little bit more about the actual experiences, whatever you're comfortable with, and then tell me which particular gods you think, or you think tentatively, or you believe tentatively actually exist, and then tell me what do you mean by actually exist. So that's three things.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the experiences that I've had, I tend not to go into them and like live hangouts or anything like that. But what I told you earlier is pretty close to what I'm willing to talk about. And so essentially that is just to push back home in certain locations.
Yeah, just to push back a little. I mean, I feel like I've had plenty of those, right? So my family's my family of origin, my mom even, all so really, really soon. And Ocean, I'm talking about my mom.
Your mom came from hangout.
She came from France, when she was 20, right? So everybody's over there, and I feel something when I'm there. I feel like if I had been mistakenly told or intentionally told that they were from Germany or something, then when I went to Germany, I would feel those things. So, I feel spiritual things. Yeah, so I understand that much, and especially with regard to location. But I don't. I haven't made the leap that it must be something external to me that is causing those feelings, or it must mean that people who previously, a long time ago, who invented a religion around it, felt those feelings, that they were legit, or that they were external, or anything like that. Because it seems to me that one can create that inside oneself, if you concentrate.
That's totally possible. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give that to you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, like, okay, is this something that is this a trick I'm playing on myself? Entirely possible.
Right.
It's not the position I have, but I feel like I'm being honest with myself.
At some point, you have to wonder, does it matter, right? If it works for you, as they say, right? As the millennials are saying, you do
From a
you.
pragmatic
Right?
perspective,
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah.
Like there's a beyond just the spiritual aspect of it. There are, and I was kind of foraying into this with David Silverman, but he was just like, no, secularism.
Well, because you went blah 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 blah,
Right.
right? As far as he's concerned, right?
Yeah.
You just said a bunch of gibberish. Plus,
In one
he had a
ear,
book
out
to
the
sell.
other. So he's one of those atheists that you can run into. Or just doesn't care about this kind of stuff. So, but within specifically Asatru, there's a lot of stories that have to do that provide life lessons, and from that you get a lot of stuff like self-actualization is something that I brought up with David, and there's other things that are along those lines that appear in the stories that are great role models in there as well. One concept that's in Asatru that brings it away from Christianity a bit is that the gods aren't there to coddle you or save you. You're responsible for yourself, and you can cry out to the gods for help if you wish, but there's no guarantee they're going to be like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. It's more the gods are interested in followers that prove themselves to them. It's a system of mutual respect in Asatru especially. And it's not I submit to Odin, it's I surmount Odin's challenges or Thor's challenges. And I have the respect of the gods as a result. So you don't there's a little bit of difference with that in Christianity. Christianity and Islam and the Abrahamics demand submission to the all-powerful deity, and Asatru demands that you stand up for yourself, which is, I think, a very important distinction.
So you're saying Asatru, and maybe for a little while, you can kind of explain a little bit about that historically, and also I think I've heard you say before that the god that you most identify with, perhaps is what you said, is Odin.
Right.
But do you also believe that Thor?
I'm not a monotheist. Okay. So
So tell me about what gods you think exist and why you think those ones exist as opposed to others, and why Odin in particular. I mean, I'm figuring it's because of all the studying, or the wisdom.
Odin. I'll talk about why Odin first, and then I'll go into some of the other.
And talk about the 9 worlds and the tree.
No.
No. Why not? No.
Okay. Let's kind of tackle one thing at a time, because the 9 worlds and the tree thing is it's a big thing to tackle. So, okay.
Odin, surprised. I'm really surprised you said no.
No, I'll go into it a little bit. It's just it's a monster. You want this short, or do you? Okay.
Let's start with the short, and then we'll open it up after you explain a little bit about the gods that you hold belief in. And then we'll open it up if people are interested.
I'll go with why Odin, and then go into the gods, and then maybe we'll tackle the tree. Why Odin is a wisdom god as well as a battle god, and there's a lot of those beliefs about standing up for yourself, self-actualization, and the pursuit of knowledge. In addition to that, are paramount in the stories about Odin. Odin is going through, sometimes in the stories he does really, really crazy shit to gain knowledge. He gouges out his own eye. He hangs himself and actually dies in order to learn what death is like. Purely for that purpose, it seems. And he's also attempting to learn as much as he can so that he can be as smart as he can for when Ragnarok comes, which is the end of all things. And then the gods will die at Ragnarok. And it's a very, very bleak ending in Norse mythology. It makes it pretty unique, actually, among religions, that it has this very bleak ending. But Odin can at least say he tried at the very end, because he'll have all these warriors and so on from Valhalla, and he's getting his shit together to try and stop the end of the world. But prophecy in the mythology says that he will not. That being said, that pursuit of knowledge is something that I find to be very interesting, that rigorous pursuit of knowledge. And I think it's something that is very inspiring as a pagan, as somebody who reads a lot of history, who's interested in learning as much as he can throughout the course of his life. It's a good role model to have, especially in the face of challenges. He's somebody that is, faces a lot of challenges in the stories he's associated with and surmounts them in ways that are very interesting, sometimes through trickery, sometimes through crazy lengths.
So I have a question that might be,
sure.
It's just a question that's popping in my head. So for example, suppose you were about to tackle something challenging intellectually. You knew you had to do a whole ton of research to get it done, and it was like a 3-month project or something like that. For you personally, do you, I assume, but I could be wrong, that you don't literally interact with Odin. But
No.
do you think about how, do you get your motivation from him? Is it that kind of a thing?
Yes. That gets into very odd territory when it comes to religion. So it's a good question and a frustrating one. So as far as whether or not I interact with Odin, I would have to know what you mean by interact. Like, do I have Odin appear in my room and tell me things? No, that's not quite how it works. But do I do interact with my altar, and I pray for guidance, for example, or strength, that kind of thing. And there's, I do an incense sacrifice before going into something that I find to be very challenging, and that works. It has that's sort of a pragmatic function there, and then there's that spiritual backup is useful, and regardless of whether or not it's real, it works in my life. So
I could see that it would work, right, in your life, but the regardless of whether or not it's real part, but the I'm thrown in with it's real, is difficult. But this,
I'm willing to make the bet. That's the thing. And but if I want to look at it from a Pascal's wager perspective, what I have to lose? It's something that I feel is correct, and I don't have anything in front of me saying otherwise. So why not? Why not?
If
somebody shows otherwise, then great, that's fantastic. But that's not where I am. As far as I want to get into what gods for a second. That's something that I defer with some pagans on, but I think that that the vast majority of ideas about God are probably based in something real. Now, and that goes for my own religion as well. Whether or not Thor is actually a guy with a hammer that did things or whatever is up in the air, but it's most likely representative of some kind of spiritual force in the universe. That goes for the Zoroastrian gods Zoroastrian's considered monotheistic to some, but it has multiple entities. The Greek gods and goddesses, the Norse gods and goddesses, the Celtic gods and goddesses, the ancient Chinese traditional gods and goddesses. All of these, I think, are based on maybe the same, maybe different forces in our universe. Or maybe from without our universe as well, who knows? Including the Christian God. Now, that's something that will get other pagans in a bit of a tizzy about, why you're going to give them that? Sure. But if I will give the Christians their God, but I will give under the caveat among many, which means that the Christian God is essentially a liar if they're going to be saying that the Bible is his word. And that gets into a whole nother little section of fun.
So for a polytheist like you, then, do you hold sort of equal tentative belief in all of the gods that you've heard of, to the extent that you're willing to get, you're willing to accept that there may be a Christian God, but then to you, he'd be a real jerk.
Yes, he is. he's doing all kinds of crazy shit in his stories.
Right.
Really, a lot of the lessons that come from the Christian God is that this guy's an asshole and you need to be afraid of him. And not that that's not necessarily true of other gods, but with him specifically, he's doing all this weird stuff about claiming that he loves you and that he's all good and benevolent, and that's not something that pops up in the Norse religions. Norse religions have fully embraced the fact that some of these gods are assholes, and like Odin, for example, starts wars and stories so that he can get more soldiers for Valhalla. He needs people to die in battle so that he can get more soldiers in Valhalla. And that's kind of an asshole thing to do, but it's something that works towards his personal ends, at least from the perspective of the mythology.
Right.
Whether or not that actual motive is true is up for grabs, but that's what the sagas and the Eddas and so on suggest.
Well, it's a more human motive, surely. I mean, it's easier to understand, right? It's pretty clear what his motive is. You don't have to twist your brain all around in order to try to wrap love into all that.
Right. And that's the thing about the Christian God, is it's trying to claim holy, benevolent entity that has also committed genocide a couple of times. And it just doesn't follow to me. At least with if you have the Norse gods, they're like, yeah, we're occasionally doing something for our own gains, but that's something that makes a little bit of more sense to me. I can get along with that. I can get on that train. I'm not able to get along on the train of this God that is saying, I am the one God that exists, and I am the one loving entity, and you better love me or else I'm going to burn you for all eternity. It just doesn't seem right.
It seems very counterintuitive. Can you tell me a little bit? Oh, I'm so glad you came, Lolly. Thank you so much.
I can't find my good headphones, so I'm stuck to the computer with a wire. I was like, where are my headphones? I had them on like 5 or 10 minutes ago, and now they're gone.
Ocean, can you tell me a little bit about, if you're not uncomfortable doing so, sort of how does your religious belief, especially as a polytheist, because I'm trying to imagine sort of what is prayer like, how does it I guess move through your daily life to the point of, like, do you have any rituals? What are they like? And in what ways does your belief help you in more mundane things, up to what do you do when you're in a crisis? Do you use your religion to help you through the crisis or not?
It's as far as using the religion and helping me in a crisis, it comes with an attitude of I am Druidic, I am also true, I'm not going to be defeated. And that's something that is useful. It provides like an extra ounce of determination that I wouldn't get from a secular source, I don't think.
It's very interesting. So, I mean, I can completely understand what you're doing there, right?
Right.
Let me ask you, to what extent is it important that the gods that you believe in exist?
Say that again?
To what extent is it important that those gods exist, and why do you think they exist, as opposed to something like, a meditative type of exercise that you're using, that you're pulling from the history that you've learned?
I would be comfortable with it being either one. It's not necessary to me that they exist, but
you personally. Yeah, and it personally tips the scale for you into belief, as opposed to holding it off and using it as a tool.
It's a fuzzy line, I think. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it is a fuzzy line. Let me just ask real quick before I invite others. This is such a stupid atheistic question, but I can't help myself.
Do it.
Do you have any? Do you know what I'm going to say?
No.
Evidence? Do you have any?
Do I have any evidence? Oh, the evidence question.
Well, I'm just curious. Here's why I'm asking it. It may be hilarious. I understand from a spiritualistic point of view that it's relatively irrelevant, especially given everything you've just said.
Right.
But I'm still curious as to why you're chipping in as opposed to not. And I'm assuming it's probably got nothing to do with evidence. So I guess a better question is, explain your reasons for deciding to buy into it, rather than do you have any evidence? Yeah, let me ask it that way.
Like the direct question, answer. I did not get much sleep. We're having talks about that. Right? I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. Helen is running on 1.5.
1.5.
So
your mom.
we're having fun. But the direct answer to do I have any evidence is no, none that I can give you. But for me, and my experience with this religion, my experience in using it in my life, that is evidence for my position, me continuing to hold my position.
It's interesting. It's like a pragmatic religious belief.
Ta-da! And I've often described it as pragmatic, but as far as reasons for believing that it's true, it's just that it works, and that feeling that I was looking for while in Christianity that was missing, or it was there but I felt incomplete, is there with this religion, or at least with this present pursuit that I'm on. My religion has evolved over the course of the 7 odd years that I've been a pagan. I started off as a panentheist, believing that God is everything, and God is outside of the universe and inside of the universe, and that the universe is essentially part of God. And to an extent, I still believe that, but if that is the case, then it's two. I believe in a divine couple, a masculine and a feminine. But then in addition to that, there's I've fallen into some of these reconstructionist traditions, like reconstructive Celtic polytheism and reconstructive Norse polytheism, or asatru.
Which makes which makes more intuitive sense to you? And do you? This has been my question, because I mean I've explored this same stuff, as I think you know, not necessarily the reconstructionist as a belief system, but I studied the mythologies before I ever considered. I did it kind of backwards. I studied the mythologies for a long, long time, and then I started examining whether there was. Then I started examining whether there was actuality there or reality there. But I definitely resonated for a long time with that idea of the masculine and feminine, and I still sort of do. It fits very nicely in with Taoism.
Right.
And but I do not feel the need to personify any longer at all. I did feel it not necessarily useful, but somehow satisfying at one point to have names to speak and say, sure. And I still do it in mantra form, but not as an actual entity, if that makes sense.
What did the personifying do for you?
At one point, I definitely found it satisfying to worship goddesses, the mother, because I'll explain. Because I felt that the masculine face of whatever the heck it was the masculine face of the divine, if you will, and I don't know how I feel about that word now, but in fact I'm pretty sure I don't really find a meaning there. But the culture I am in, and generally in the world, the face of the divine is very much a masculine face. And I felt like if you picked a seesaw, I wanted to jump up and down on the end that was the female side. Yeah,
I think that it's kind of a natural backlash onto the Abrahamic religion, because it basically exported the feminine divine.
Yeah, I wanted to balance. My goal was balance at that point.
Right.
Now I see that kind of balance is inescapable, but at that point I was very much in a rebellious phase, and this is from like a long time. A long time I wore the face of that, but didn't really put any credence in it. And then I started playing around with actual, like, exploration of whether there was, I don't know, you know what I mean. But I mean, at first it was definitely just rebellion. I was like, no, I'm a goddess worshiper. No, I am a druid. I played with druidism from my early teen years, and
I didn't get into it until my 20s.
Well, it's
very odd. Like a lot of people that are pagan, they get into it like when they're 14 or something like that. I knew people that were getting into it, but I thought it was weird.
I remember dressing up. I mean, my parents used to have, they still may, I don't know, I think since they're a little older now, but they had highly ironic solstice bonfire festivals for the philosophy department. And like I, being like an 8 or 9-year-old, was like, cool. And I made an altar, and I dressed in green, and I was like, let's do this, you know. And so I mean, I've always I gravitated toward that stuff for most of my life. But I don't know. I don't think that. I mean, I don't feel any need to put faces on it anymore. But I get it. You know, I do.
I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
Well, you're wrong.
Well, I could be, but I mean, I understand all of the emotional stuff that you guys are describing, and even the idea of using a particular framework or another in a pragmatic way, and having sort of physical effects come out of that, right? But the ontology part is where I don't see how it behooves you to go on ahead and honestly believe. So I have two problems. One, okay. I think you might be lying, to use a Silverman term.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, maybe if you really pretend that really they exist, it has a bigger effect.
Okay.
But if that's not it, and I want to really hear you say, no, that's not it, these gods actually exist, then I've got, why would you think that? And how is it better? What makes it better? I mean, at least if you recognize it as a framework, let's say, then you can, take it off and put another one in front of you for different purposes, right? And that, to me, would be more pragmatic than trying to decide among various frameworks which one is actually real, and then without any particular evidence, just deciding that one's real because of the emotional resonance.
Can I retort about the pragmatism aspect of that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. As far as like just switching between frameworks and so on, it's like, well, today I'll be a Christian because that's more useful. It kills.
I don't quite mean it like that.
Well,
I don't quite mean it like that. But go on. Yeah.
Okay, that kills the idea of identity that is offered through identifying with a religion. So if I can just switch between frameworks and pull what's useful from this framework today and that framework tomorrow, you lose the identity aspect, which to me is one of the strongest parts of it.
So what do you mean by identity?
Oh, what I was saying earlier about the attitude that sort of comes with it of I am also true, I will not be defeated. That attitude that comes with facing challenges is very useful, and you lose that if it's not a consistent thing. Now, as far as why I'm making the bet, it comes from that experiential base of having an epistemology that is rooted in experience, and then going under the operation of, okay, there is something. What is it? And that's fine by me. And that's really what I believe is there is something. My provisional position is...
It's not about logic. It's about something else.
Right. And I totally accept that. Well, except there's a logical component of it of, I trust my senses. This is a sense to me. Why not trust this? So, and I don't have a good reason not to. If someone gives me a good reason not to, or provides me with evidence that is counter to to this, then fine. I'm willing to listen to logic. But it is neither wholly logic nor is it wholly against logic either. I don't think it's against logic at all.
Well, gosh.
It's
a person
it is
can,
it is an argument though. Like he does have a point. You can do that.
well, you
Not
can
everything
do
is
that.
logic.
This is the point: is that there are activities, there are particular exercises that one can do. If you find it helpful, you can teach yourself to have an other that's with you all the time, and you can name it, and you can converse with it sort of all you want. And the more you sort of just work on it as an exercise, the more real it feels.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if maybe your own body is,
Maybe I brainwashed myself.
well,
That's kind of a conclusion. That's a kind of a conclusion I reached after exploring a lot of these traditions. But that doesn't invalidate any of them.
it does
mean that there's not like a set of any particular entity necessarily, but I mean, I have created those sensations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that any way you get there is awesome, because as long as you're not taking them too seriously, because it's fucking cool. That's what it's about.
Yeah, but you can get all of it, literally all of it, as far as I'm concerned, without thinking anything real is
right. Believing it too much, but you have to believe it a little. You have to.
I understand, but we've got a pagan.
But I don't think
in front
Ocean's
of us.
there. I don't think Ocean's there.
Well, did you hear him? He believes that these multiple gods really do exist.
What am I missing then? Bob?
Are they real?
No, I don't think you're. I don't think you're necessarily.
What do you mean by I'm not there? Like, what do you mean by that?
I don't. Oh no. I don't think I don't think you're taking it as seriously as she thinks you're taking it. I don't think that you think that Zeus is on Olympus. I'm not sure about that.
Oh no. Okay.
Exactly.
So you may actually agree with my accusation that I feel like there's, maybe he's lying, if I can borrow from Silverman, right? Like there's a difference here. Like if you consider a Christian who sincerely believes there really is this God, and it's the one true God, and Jesus is, really came down to save us and all of that. There's an ontology that I think is very different. Although now it seems as though, Ocean, you're saying that your ontology is just as strong, to use. I don't have a good word for it.
Similar enough.
Literal?
It's a different religion, though.
I understand it's a different religion.
It's a very different.
It comes with different
metaphysic.
things.
Yeah,
I just don't see the point of convincing yourself unless you have evidence that it's true. Now, you know what?
I think like I've convinced myself like I went about with like that I intended to brainwash me. And
no, I understand. And the other thing is
across.
you have cited personal experiences, although you're reluctant, and I understand being reluctant. But, I just never get those.
Nature of the internet, man. I'm not going into it.
It's okay. But I think I've had plenty that were similar, good enough, right? Like, and it associated with place or smells or nature or, where you feel all of this spirituality, you feel connected and you feel like this is where you belong and there's a sense of home, even if it's a foreign place. I feel like I've had all of those, right? So I guess the question is, did I do it wrong?
Let me go into about like experiences and the reason why I don't go into them is because I can describe the experience, and after the experience has been described, what will happen is, there is a naturalistic explanation for what happened, which I'm willing to grant. Fine, there is a naturalistic explanation for what happened. Usually the point of somebody providing an experience is to have some kind of testimony of, my religion is real because of this experience, this is what I experienced, therefore you should believe it too. I'm not interested in making that argument. I'm interested in, okay, so this works for me. I understand that there is a naturalistic explanation for any experience that I may have had.
Yeah,
but
I get it. Yeah, I totally get it.
That's not the conclusion that I draw from it. And what matters as far as when talking about my beliefs is what I infer from certain experiences. The rest of it is fair game to me. When it comes to personal experiences, it's like, well, what do we have to validate? First, I can't validate that the experience happened. I can't validate the experience as real. There's a number of things that I can't validate, and I also can't validate that my explanation for the experience means anything in the first place. So it's just an argument I skip over.
Yeah.
There you go. I love it, and I want to. Yeah, I mean that when I gave up on my Kundalini yoga, because, well, first of all, because I was physically unable to do it anymore, but when even during the last months of my attempts to practice, the part of the reason I did was I got really disillusioned because of, I mean, I doubted every time I went down one of these roads. I would be doubting it the whole time. I would be like, I'm faking this, I'm faking this, I'm faking this, I'm faking this, and then I realized too late on that occasion that it doesn't matter if I'm making this happen to myself, because the results were real. The positive results were real. I felt a certain way. I felt better. I had, like, there were results, regardless of whether I was raising my Kundalini through my crown chakra or not.
No, I completely understand
you know?
that. I absolutely understand that. I understand the results and how you can get them. I do. Oh, I really do.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels, at least in my experience, when you do have those naturalistic results, which is the reason I'm begging people not to tell me explanations of some things. I cherish that mystery. I love the mystery of certain things. I don't want to know.
Well, Spackle is here, and I haven't seen you in so long. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello.
And you had a question, so let's go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm moving. It's been awful. So
I feel you.
Oh gosh, I just want to lay in the freeway at this point. But I'm alive. I'm here. Hey, I got a question for you, Ocean. I'm a Christian,
yeah.
So obviously you know, but some people don't in the room. So sometimes when I end up talking to people that believe, particularly atheists or agnostics, and we get into this "is there a God" debate, I find that I'm often making deistic arguments. I'm arguing for a deistic God, and then to prove a theistic God, the God that interacts, the God that I have had some experience with, the God that I believe in, is a lot harder to prove. Do you find that you're in the same situation?
Yeah, that's why I don't bother with it. I occasionally make, and usually with Christians, I'll use a simplified version of the Kalam, and that's fine. It's a general prime mover, which I believe to be chaos. But that's, again, a deistic argument to an extent. It doesn't get you to Nordic polytheism, you know. Just like it's not going to get you directly to Yahweh, you know.
Right. So my position has always been, when asked, and it's kind of Kierkegaardian, and people get really aggravated and want to stab me usually, is that I believe that when I believe in Jesus Christ coming down and saving a world that is marred by sin and stuff like that this is a faith-based position, and I can't logically necessarily come to it, but it's been experientially ringing true to me to some degree. Do you find yourself explaining like that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And do you find that causes more aggravation from agnostics and atheists, or less aggravation?
Because listen to reason. Why do you believe things? Like, you know, a lot of the questions that Helena just threw at me are things that pop up from having that conversation, and they're legitimate questions, a lot of them. But you know, the honest answer is going to be, well, I've had experience X. I have made a conclusion from experience X. If you want to show me something that shows that my conclusion is inaccurate or not representative of reality, I will look at that evidence. But if you're going to try and convince me that my gods are not real, you need to give me something. Like, if you want me to hold the position, no, these do not exist, that's a claim too, and you've got to support it. And it's just as unsupportable as mine from a epistemological perspective. Neither one can be obtained.
Ocean, if you are wrong about who God is, how do you think that would affect your world? Like from your perspective, if you were wrong about the Nordic gods and it was Shiva instead, How would that
That's
affect
compatible with my beliefs, honestly. But
you? Okay.
it would be something incompatible would be if the Christian God was true in everything that he claimed. So that would be a wild surprise for me. But the only way that I'd find out is at the White Throne Judgment, where I'm sitting there going like, well, hey, and then he pulls the lever and I go down to hell.
Surprise!
Yeah, right. Woohoo! You're gone. And to me, as far as me having that experience, if the White Throne Judgment happens and I'm not in the Book of Life and all that jazz, I won't have any regrets as far as the way that I've lived my life. I went about this whole religion thing, I believe honestly, and that God created a world in which it was very difficult to ascertain his existence and to really understand him. Okay. I wound up going with a different set of beliefs than are the correct ones, and he's willing to punish me for it. Guy's an asshole. Okay. My problem, I was talking a little bit about this earlier, that a god can be an asshole, and it's fine as long as they admit that they're an asshole, which is largely what the Norse gods do. It's like,
Nordic gods are assholes.
They're assholes, a lot of them. As purposefully fucking with human lives in the sagas. But that they're not saying that they are loving protectors of humanity. As your God is. And that's the distinction I think that is very important.
Same with the Greek gods. They're like arrogant dicks who go around raping people,
Oh, the Greek gods just make the humans look more divine. I mean, let's get real.
Well, yeah, I mean, Prometheus is the only good guy god, so he ended up with his liver getting.
What happened to him?
What the fuck, man?
Yeah, so guys, I wanted to add a few things, and
I'll say they're assholes, but they're also admirable assholes to an extent, as I was talking earlier.
Oh,
I don't want to get into God hates his own, or Ocean hates his own gods, that kind of thing. It's just not. That's not really the case either.
So Logic is going to go next, and then I want to ask another question, and then whoever wants to go after me can go. So Logic, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so I think that belief is an essential aspect to the creation of a positive life. The things in life seem absolutely impossible to accomplish, and some people can will their way through it without any belief that they can accomplish this thing, or that they're playing along with some process that goes somewhere. And I think that people who believe in something, I think this does make them stronger. And things like rituals or prayers help to reinforce that. And I think that this type of thing really helps people a lot. So although socially there are some consequences to having beliefs, like people that are radicals and things like this, I think that it is something that is really, and so I really think this is something that helps people a lot. And also something that was mentioned was the value of connectivity to life. So like walking through nature feeling like you belong, you're part of something. I think that people who don't feel like they belong or feel like they're not connected with things, I think this is a hugely detrimental thing for people's lives, and we need some form of connectivity with nature so that we feel what we're doing has some more purpose to it. And these are psychological needs that have to be filled in some facet or form. And I think people who go totally on logic and trust evidence completely and just go with it and don't consider the alternative of experience or sensation or psychological needs, I think this is a mistake. I think all of these things come out of nature, and it's all related and dependent on each other. And I think also a lot of people who grow up religious or grow up believing or are part of something like that, this also becomes a part of their psychology, which makes it even more necessary to have something like that in their life. So it's just unfair to ask people based on evidence to give up their religion or belief or whatever.
That's actually unfair.
Yeah, it's not because they have a psychological need, so they're going to be in pain. They're always going to feel like they're missing something.
That's actually related to what I wanted to ask, and that was if archetypes play into your belief system, Ocean.
What do you mean?
Does the idea of archetypes have anything to do with what you believe.
I want to get a little bit more specific of a question than that, because I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how that would
Maybe
work.
you, JJ, why don't you give an example?
That's
an
great.
archetype. An archetype. Well,
Besides repeating, give an example.
Some people would say that Odin is the archetype of a father figure, along with other deities, and I wonder if that if the psychological idea of archetypes.
Would you like me to give another example?
Sure.
I think I understand what he's saying.
Okay.
Actually, go ahead.
I definitely used them, or they definitely played in, and sort of still do. The maiden mother crone thing.
Maiden mother. Wait.
Maiden to mother to crone. That's a very important thing in the Celtic idea, anyway.
The goddess trinity.
Yeah.
What's a crone?
And, crone is an old woman.
The old wise woman.
Yeah. So Cara Dune,
so
Bridget,
you're talking about
or Persephone Bridget. I mean Persephone Demeter. So it's basically the young woman, often victim, not always, but and then there's the nurturing Earth Mother, and then there's the wise woman, who is like, it's kind of like the recycler, if that makes sense at all. But I found in my life that I clung to the Persephone immensely, like, because it fit me so well.
You dark person, you.
Well, no, not even. It was both. It was both. It was spring flowers. It was feeling like grabbed in my life by some dark influences. It was going back and forth between those two constantly. And it was youth. So it was kind of a helplessness in that cycle also, which is what Persephone's story is. So I have had to do a lot of work, and still am working on it, to make it acceptable for me to move from this thing which feels so familiar to me and so native into something which I find rather uninteresting, which is this whole mother thing. It just doesn't interest me. It never has. I don't identify with Demeter. And I have been working real hard to find good things about her that I want to become. And I've done, like, I don't know how many pieces of art of artwork about it, and a lot of thought. And I mean, I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there. But they are, I mean, archetypes are powerful. I think, and I think they do play into that. So anyway.
So Ocean, you get an idea of what he's talking about. Do you think that's what's operating here?
I think that kind of relates to what I was describing earlier, about, like, one of the reason that I venerate Odin in the first place has to do with his pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, and that archetype is definitely, like, it's being used in a similar way that Unspeakable is talking about. So, I mean, yeah, I guess the answer would be yes, as much as I can understand it.
So tell me about the gods that you believe exist, and maybe just to push a little, like to be the atheist asshole, just because there doesn't seem to be anyone in here willing to do that right now. Like, where do they live? Are they inside the universe? Are they outside the universe? Do they transcend? What does that even mean? All of those typical questions. How do you answer those? Or
I've
maybe you don't care.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. My suspicion is immaterial intelligence, but you know, it could be something else. I've got no idea. As far as where they live, it seems to make sense to me that they would be not contingent on the universe. Maybe they have another source. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're part of the universe.
Well, they have to have some matter. At least Thor maybe has to have matter because of the hammer. Well, doesn't do something with
that
the
gets into
hammer.
the idea of whether or not Thor is literally a god carrying a hammer. A lot of Asatru don't believe that.
Okay, do you?
No. As far as like that he's a literal humanoid entity that carries a hammer. This doesn't. It's the stories that include that are stories that have been revealed to us. It doesn't mean that Thor has 2 legs, 2 arms, and a hammer. Although it is hilarious to say stuff like to Christians, your God was nailed to a cross, my God has a hammer. But anyway,
Yeah, I could see why that would be.
it's a fun little one-liner to pull out every once in a while. But it's a like whether or not he's actually that entity is something that's kind of up for interpretation. That people pray to this entity, and there's not a physical entity with 2 arms and 2 legs and a hand shows up and goes, "Let's go, come on." It's not something that happens. So it's a personification of a spiritual force that is recognized, and that same spiritual force could be recognized by another religion, by another name. It's something I'm completely open to. That's the reason why I am open to the idea of any of the gods being real.
I see.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. I understand now a little bit better. Right. Okay. Did anyone else want to? I see Eric in here. Eric, do you have anything you want to bring up? Or Logic? It looks like you unmuted.
Yeah. It's just again it's just like an unfair thing to ask of somebody to be able to describe where their God is. I mean, his.
Well, I would disagree with
it's only because
I don't think that's.
It's
No,
intuitive.
I agree
it's
with
not,
Helena, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question because
I mean, you can ask it, but there's no answer. So.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't want to presuppose that
you gotta
there's
get to that
answer.
point.
He could have an answer.
There's a lot of like Christians especially will start to make claims around this shit,
Yeah.
and that's something that they need to be called out on. And I think there's a difference between somebody who's willing to make claims around that and say them with certainty, and somebody like me who is saying, "Well, I don't necessarily know."
Yeah, siding with the unknown instead of the known.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's with Christians, there's all kinds of rules and everything to try to explain everything, and they're willing to fight. They're willing to die on that hill. I'm not. And it's a good question to ask, and it's completely legitimate to ask, but I don't have an answer that necessarily is able to be chased down. There's no rabbit there,
Yeah, well, it's okay to ask the question. I think what I mean is that it's not fair to expect to have an answer for it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I might agree with you there.
Yeah.
You don't have an answer to this, therefore you're wrong. That's definitely.
But that's why you believe it partially, that you don't know. So well,
I'm willing to believe it, and so and with technology advancing through the future, we may be able to find some way to validate whether or not these things are accurate in any way, shape, or form. We may discover a god. We may discover some kind of counterproof that is unbeknownst to us as far as how it could possibly exist at this point. I have no idea, but that when that day comes, I'll be examining things. If and when. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's. I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife, but if there is one, I guess I'll see it, maybe, or I'll go to hell.
I believe in an afterlife, though, so that's kind of. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Is
interesting.
it reincarnation, or is it something else?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, Logic. Tell me about your afterlife.
So I believe in an afterlife in comparison with there being no afterlife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you swing that, you lean that way rather.
I swing that way. I think the evidence sort of pushes that.
I swing both ways. No, I'm just kidding. No.
You think it's more likely than not that there is an afterlife? Yeah. Do you think that's only for human? Do you think that's only for human beings, or is that for any living creature?
I think it's only for
plant life, bacteria, viruses?
No, only humans, only consciousness.
Only humans.
So cats aren't conscious?
No, they're not conscious enough. No.
So why without a god? So I got a question here.
Yeah.
Without I assume you don't have one of the Abrahamic gods, right? Or do you? Are you Christian or something like that?
No, I don't. I don't go with a god. I just go with the idea that there is a force of some sort behind all life being possible.
So why then is afterlife only for consciousness? Why do you think only beings with consciousness get an afterlife?
Right. I think it's a process where consciousness is grown through the mixing of the energy and the construction of matter to create more complex organisms, and then consciousness is something that out of the complexity is possible to survive.
Yeah, but logic by afterlife, do you mean midlife? Like after you turn 40, you start your afterlife because your consciousness...
Because your life is over already.
I used to think that. No.
Thank God Michael's here.
You weird.
When Michael thinks someone's weird, we've gone
it's
somewhere.
Multifaceted. The idea is multifaceted, so... But it's silly to think that out of chaos, life is possible. And so in my opinion, if I were to gamble on what's going on, there's something more behind life being possible than just coming into existence out of mere chaos, gravity, and other mechanisms like that. I think there must be a will behind the processes of nature in terms of what it wants to do. And I especially think that is there in terms of the promotion of growth. Even though there is chaos and things are in a constant state of decay, there is still growth. Why have growth? There's no reason for that in the universe. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a God, but of some sort of force or will. Something has to have wanted that to come into existence. There has to be some sort of drive for it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
I'll piggyback off of that for a second. I think that the force of life itself existing is enough for me to want to know, okay, is there something? It's enough for me to start asking that question, especially since how inexplicable the nature of life is, and how strange. Like it's very odd, especially when it's gotten to a point of being so complex that there's a portion of the universe that has gotten together and started philosophizing.
Yes, exactly, and I can't even imagine death. It's not even. I don't even think it's because I haven't experienced death that I can't imagine it. I think it's because it's not going to happen.
There's nothing to imagine.
That maybe my body will be gone, but the energy that makes up my consciousness may still exist in some facet or form, or it won't. But I think it's possible that it could.
You think you even think it's more likely that it will than that it won't. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do because of the psychological need for it.
Because that's an interesting admission.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's other.
The mind needs it.
Speaking of that force of life idea, there's other kind of ideas in paganism about what the gods are, and I was listening to one pagan who. I think he's a priest out in California, but he's a self-admitted atheist, as well as a pagan, which is not entirely uncommon. It's a thing. That he said that people will ask him, "Where is the hand of God?" and he responds, "Look at the end of your own arm." And I think that's a really interesting sort of perspective to look at it and kind of twist it around.
It's just reminding me very much of sort of the things that the creationist type argument. Like, what do you mean there's no evidence? Look around. Look at the tree.
Well, careful though.
No, what he's meaning by that is not that your hands are the evidence of God. It's your hands are the hands of God, and that which we recognize as divine is ourselves, and it's nothing more than that. It's nothing less than that. It's human determination is a sort of supernatural concept. I think that's also, creating mystery where there doesn't necessarily need to be. I think
but that's kind of an atheistic concept there, right? Somebody who says sort of my hands are the hands of God is actually kind of saying there is no supernatural external being. It's all in us and around us and connected amongst us.
This guy was using terms in a way that you don't usually hear pagans use, like he was talking about kind of the psychological aspect of a ceremony and saying that that's magic. I don't know. It was a atheistic paganism is something that I'm just now reading about and hearing interviews about, and it's kind of a new world there. It's something that I perused through and then decided it's it's not really me. But now I'm looking at it from more of a academic perspective, of trying to understand it. But it's got a lot of different. There's different concepts there that are worth chasing down. But like I said earlier, I think that we were talking about the concept of woo earlier, and I think that atheistic paganism, as I said a second ago, sort of creates mystery where there doesn't necessarily need to be, and is kind of wooey in that aspect of just kind of plugging your ears and going la la la, this is mysterious. But whereas the search for how I'm approaching it and how I've described myself approaching it is something that I think it's looking at something that is mysterious because it is so mysterious. It's a strange idea.
And I have to add that.
Well, I want to some of the newcomers, if you have anything specific that you want to say, I'd like to go through each of the people who are here on the panel, and maybe talk a little bit longer, but let's try to keep it to 10 minutes at the most, so I can close it out at a reasonable time. And then we'll just go from there. Maybe there'll be an after hang if people are interested. So who would like to go first? Just speak up.
Oh, me. I just wanted to say.
Go for it, Michael.
Well, no, I don't. There's no. Well, the idea of for a psychological reason, he believes in an afterlife. I thought like looking at the totality of your existence and everything in your existence as everything, totally everything, that your hand is the hand of God. It's all you get to work with, so to speak.
Right.
So the idea that even the mind, the psychology of a mind, has a focal point that thinks and aims towards an afterlife is almost part of the whole system as well. It kind of functions as a type of justification to believe that type of thing. That's all I
I agree with you. There's a Celtic idea of the afterlife called the otherworld that is something that I've warmed up to, but I don't even take it provisionally. It's just like it's an idea that's in Celtic polytheism, and I like it. It could be the realm of the gods. It could be the spiritual realm. Like in Celtic, in Celtic polytheism, there's an idea of something called the thin place, and that is an area of nature that is very beautiful and very spiritual, and it's where the line between the spiritual world, being the other world, and our world is very thin.
And you can go down and live with a Donny sheet.
Right. And I've been to a couple of what the Irish described as thin places. One of them is a place called Glendalough. Look up pictures of it; it's absolutely beautiful. They saw very beautiful places in nature as being a thin place, and the idea of what's on the other side of that thin place coincides with their idea of what an afterlife is. That you go to the other world, carried by the guardian archer. So and that gets into this. Celtic mythology is so vast and also horribly documented. So it's a kind of an interesting situation to be in from a reconstructionist perspective.
It really is. I thought I was going to study. I thought I was going to be studying Celtic mythology for my life. Basically, I thought I was going to learn Welsh and translate the Mammoth again, and then rewrite it in modern idiom. I did none of these things, but I still have it in several in all the translations I can find. Yeah. And if you want my Lady Gregory, I have a good edition of it. So, yeah.
Julian's a friend of mine, Helena. Julian, you around?
Julian, welcome. And would you like to add something?
Is your mic working, man? I'm not hearing you.
I have a couple. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead while Julian fixes his mic.
Hi, Helena. How you doing?
Just fine.
Awesome. A couple comments and then a question for Ocean. I share similar views as far as our. I share a pantheistic view of God. So the what you said earlier, Helena, just pretty much would express that, this interconnection with nature being the God in essence, and feeling that connection. I would agree with logic. I would tend to lean towards the idea of an afterlife, just by observing life and death cycles of nature. How that all pans out, I don't know. We all have our guesses. And my question for Ocean was, Ocean, by the way, I don't know if I ever told you this, but you sound like Bart Ehrman to me. I don't know. Your voice sounds like Bart Ehrman. Yeah.
Huh. Oh, okay. I'll see. Okay, anyway, that's interesting. I like listening to him talk, so maybe it has to do with my ego. Go ahead.
The question I have is, you said that you would be open to any evidence against your beliefs in your gods.
Right.
I was curious, what would that evidence look like to you?
I have no clue. And as I attempted to qualify earlier, I hope that it would be something that would be maybe inconceivable from where I'm sitting.
Maybe like a lobotomy?
Like a what?
Like a lobotomy? Might be.
Oh, gods. Okay. But like, say someone is able to provide some kind of evidence in physics that shows no, it's absolutely impossible for gods to exist as any description, any reasonable description of what they are. Like that the universe wall is locked, or I don't know. Like there's some things that you could take a whack at, but I don't know. But I'm not holding out for seeing it, but I'm also open to it if it comes along. It's something that would be interesting to me. But like I said earlier, it's something that would open up a whole new frontier about spirituality to me. If somebody was able to prove that the gods didn't exist, it's like, oh, okay, well, dang, what is this? This is humans have been wrong about this the whole time, and it's a whole new direction, and maybe that'll give credence to people that I get annoyed with, like New Agey people that don't necessarily believe in gods, but they have different kind of spiritual applications of explanations of spirituality. Perhaps they would deserve a look at that point.
Well, and what does it mean to be alive and then just be dead? Cool. Awesome. Nature created us for that purpose. Sounds fun, guys.
There doesn't necessarily have to be a purpose.
Oh, yeah. But
that's an argument that I don't really like running with, because
it's not the argument, but it's,
Yeah, it's easy to deny that argument's legitimacy at all. Like, all right, so there is no purpose to life. Your purpose in life is what you make of it. Okay, I can agree with that. I just think there's gods too.
I don't know. For me, I think that if I just live and die, and it's life is just this complicated thing that's been created out of natural processes, and it's just kind of weird. I feel like I take more ownership over my consciousness than that, and I don't feel like it's meaningful if you don't think that.
Sure.
Yeah, personally.
So Julian is here. Julian, you want to do a mic check real quick and make a couple of quick comments, because I want to close it out soon.
No, Julian.
I don't think we can hear Julian.
Message on Facebook.
Okay. Well, anyone else want some final words? Otherwise, we're going to close the hang and maybe open up an after hang, depending on what all's going on in the YouTube world currently. Anybody?
Cool.
I can read when I was talking about the goddess stuff, I ran off and got this thing that's on my wall from when I was goddessy. I can read the names of the Great Mother if you want.
I think that would be a great way to close out this hang.
Go ahead and, play us out with that. That'd be awesome.
Oh, I think Julian. Wait. Before you do.
Okay, that's fine.
Wait. Lolly, hold on a second, because I think Julian might have audio. Julian, you want to give it a try? I saw the avatar pop up for a second there.
Julian, it's not working.
Oh.
Oh, well.
All right, Lolly,
Too bad.
sing us.
He's a really cool guy too. So.
Yeah, it would have been wonderful to meet him. Lolly, sing us out.
Oh, I'm not going to sing for you.
Well, you don't have to literally sing.
Good.
Sing to our souls.
Yes, you do.
That would be tragic. Listen to the words of the Great Mother, who of old was called Artemis, Astarte, Demeter, Melusine, Aphrodite, Caradun, Diana, Arian Road. How do you say that, Ocean? Arian Road. Bridget, Hecate, and by many other names. I am the beauty of the green earth and of the white moon and the mysteries of the waters. From me all things proceed, and unto me they must return. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, mirth and reverence within you. And you who seek to know me, know that your seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know the mystery. If that which you seek you find not within yourself, you will never find it without. For behold, I have been with you from the beginning, and I am that which is attained at the end of desire.
Thank
Blessed
you.
be.
Thank you, everybody. Ocean, thank you very much. You complicated guy.
Working on it.
Yeah, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for doing this
Thanks,
as well.
Helen.
Thanks everybody for showing up.
Yo.